So good evening, folks. Welcome to our Applied Behavior Analysis virtual information session. My name is Eliel Costa. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions. And with us today is Dr. Martyr, which she'll be going over some of the content for tonight's presentation, or I should say this evening's presentation. Just kind of a quick overview of what the hour looks like. We'll go over the School of Education here at Hopkins. We'll do brief introductions. And then at that point, Dr. Martyr will take over and review the ABA program. And then I'll come back at the end and talk about admission requirements, financial aid, and scholarship opportunities. And we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. So as we kind of walk through today's presentation, if you do have questions, feel free to use that Q&A function as we kind of go through, and we'll be answering them as the presentation goes on, and then we'll do a final live Q&A at the very end. So I'll go ahead and get started here. Just a quick overview about the School of Education here at Johns Hopkins. We are one of the 9 schools here at JHU. Our total enrollment roughly is around 1,164 students. We do have 10 master level programs, 2 doctoral degrees, and 2 graduate certificates. For ABA, or Applied Behavior Analysis, we have the master's in Special Education Severe Disabilities, ABA. Then we also have the postmaster's certificate in ABA as well, which we'll be covering those 2 programs here this evening. We have 109 full-time faculty, and we award annually about 500 degrees. Here at the School of Education at Hopkins, we have a growing alumni of 27,000 students, and Dr. Martyr will go on a little bit later in the presentation specifically about some of our graduates in terms of the BCBA certification throughout the years. We're ranked in the top 20 best education schools by US News and World Report. And then on the right side here, you'll see an overview of our geographical representation, 42 states, including DC and Puerto Rico, 58 countries of citizenship, right? 32% of our students are first gen. And then 30% are international. There is a blend when it comes to our programs of them being online, on campus, or hybrid. We'll talk a little bit about what both of these programs look like here for the fall of 2026. So yeah, very diverse community here at Hopkins at the School of Education, and we hope that after today's presentation, are interested in becoming part of it. So real briefly here is our special education faculty. And with us this evening is Dr. Martyr. And I'll go ahead and allow Dr. Martyr to introduce herself, and then she'll take it over for the ABA content.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here. I'm glad to see all these great names listed in our info session for tonight. Excited to talk to you guys about our ABA program. I have been a faculty member here at Johns Hopkins in the School of Education since 2018, and we started our ABA program in 2013. So as we talk tonight, I'll give you a little bit of more background on that history about our programs, and as Eliel mentioned, talk about some of our graduates. So if we go on to the next slide, I want to sort of talk about what is applied behavior analysis. And of course, that's why you're applying to this program, to learn more about it. But I want this to give us sort of a reference point. So obviously all of you are interested in becoming board certified, and so that's why you're checking out this program. So when we think about applied behavior analysis, we're talking about the science of ABA, that study of the principles of learning and behavior and understanding why humans do what they do. Um, but more specifically, we're also looking at the application of ABA, both the science as well as the strategies involved in ABA, to improve socially significant behavior for individuals, specifically within educational settings. So when we look at that, if you're interested in understanding more about that BCBA, that certification in behavior analysis, it is a graduate level certification. So as you will see, you do need to have coursework at the graduate level. And when we think about sort of the marriage between ABA and education, we see a lot of a variety of educational settings where BCBAs are working, anywhere from our K through 12 brick and mortar kind of schools, private schools. We see BCBAs working in center-based programs, home-based programs, as well as consulting to other schools and providing professional development. The roles that we see that BCBAs play in education is as behavior specialists, teachers. We see school psychologists as BCBAs, staff trainers, like I said, professional development, speech and language pathologists, program coordinators, as well as folks who are therapists in a home-based setting, or even administrators in any of those educational settings, from a school to a home-based program to clinics and so forth. So when we think about what does a behavior analyst do, like what are those services that a behavior analyst provides within an educational setting? And this comes right from our Behavior Analyst Certification Board website. So the BACB, who is the organization that sets our certification standards. So we are looking at the types of services that behavior analysts provide in educational settings, from conducting behavioral assessments, to analyzing that data from those assessments or interventions, to develop, to make database decisions and develop instructional practices, from writing and revising behavior analytic intervention plans, training others to implement those plans, overseeing the implementation of intervention plans, as well as anything outlined within our task list. So this is the fifth edition task list, which has now passed. So now we're on the test content outline. We have now switched to talking about the test content outline, and that's the sixth edition. So the BACB has set forth, if you're familiar with these task lists and test content outline, in the past, the task list really was supposed to be about what was on the exam, but it really guided curriculum within graduate programs specifically. We've now moved on to the sixth edition test content outline, which really sets the standard for what would be included on this big BCBA exam. So we think about these are a lot of the services that BCBAs do provide within educational settings. And if we go on to our next slide, we also want to talk about what's it look like out there for employment for BCBA. So this is just really came out last week, hot off the presses from the BACB, their job reports. And this looks at demand for BCBAs across the US from 2010 to 2025. So if you go on to the BACB website, you can get access to this report and see all the different states and what their percentages are for an increase or decrease or maintaining. But if you look at the annual demand since 2010, we do see this steady increase in folks in looking for BCBA. So job announcements specifically for that credential of a BCBA. Since last year, we see a 28% increase in the job postings. So this just came out in last week, 2026. So this is all the job postings from 2025. So we do see a 28% increase. So like I said, it's steadily increasing. We also see the highest demand in the following states: California, Jersey, Texas, Massachusetts, and North Carolina. And in Maryland specifically, I looked at their data when thinking about Johns Hopkins being in Maryland, and that's a 57% increase. So good news is that there are lots of people looking for BCBA, so this is a growing field. And so folks who are coming through our program should be able to find a job once they graduate, because the demand is very high for this certification for employees that have this certification. All right, so we've talked about BCBAs, we talked about some of the roles that they play within educational settings. Now let's talk about what the ABA program here at Johns Hopkins has to offer. So we actually have two programs, but if you look at the right-hand side of your screen, you see those circles, and I want to point those circles out to you because this talks about what is required to become board certified. So the first thing you have to become board certified is a master's degree. You also need to complete ABA coursework, and then you need to create complete fieldwork experiences. And once you have all three, a master's degree, ABA coursework, and those experiences, fieldwork experiences, then you apply to the BACB to become board certified, to pass the exam and then become board certified. Here at Hopkins, we have two avenues to get to that certification, to become eligible to be certified. One is our master's program in special education with a focus on ABA. And this is for folks who don't yet have their master's degree, need their master's degree, and they would go through our program, complete the 7 ABA courses that we provide, which are 21 credits, and then take an additional 5 special ed courses. Core courses are specific to special ed, which is another 15 credits. And that's your master's degree in special ed. We also have the practicum elective courses. So these are electives. They're not required to graduate from our program, but they are required if you need that support in getting that fieldwork experience. We do offer those 4 practicum electives for both the postmaster certificate and the master's. But again, it's not required to graduate from the program. This master's can be completed in 2 years. Obviously, if you're adding on those practicum electives, then it would be an additional third year. Courses are offered in the fall, spring, and summer. When we look at the postmaster's certificate in ABA, this is for individuals who are coming into the program. They already have their master's degree and they want that specialized training beyond their master's degree. So for the postmaster certificate, obviously you need your master's degree. You complete those same 7 ABA courses that the master's students complete. So that's that same 21 credits. And then you also have that option of doing the 4 practicum electives if you need that help and that support with the fieldwork hours. And then the postmasters also can be completed in 2 years with that optional third year to do the fieldwork. So our programs, our 2 programs, the masters as well as the postmasters, enable our applicants and our graduates to be eligible to take the BCBA exam. And so thinking about, there's been a lot of changes. If you're familiar with all the changes that are going on with the BACB, we have now 2 pathways to becoming board certified through the BCBA. One is going through an accredited program. Another one is which is Pathway 1, and the other is Pathway 2, which is going through a program that meets the Pathway 2 requirements, which our program does. So in 2027, so anybody who's applying now really needs to know what those 2027 requirements are. So as of January 1st, 2027, students will be able to become board certified through Pathway 2, which all of our courses align with the Pathway 2 requirements, which is 315 hours of instruction. If you want to learn more about that, again, I'm going to send you over to the BACB website. Check out their newsletter, specifically the March 2022 newsletter that outlines all of these new requirements that are coming into place in 2027. All right, so some specific details about both programs. Our students take our courses in the evenings. So we always say that this course sequence, both programs really meets our professional students, right? So you can work full time and still go to school in the evenings. You complete the program by taking 2 courses a semester. And as I said before, you can finish both programs within 2 years. Obviously, if you're doing those practicum electives, that adds an additional year onto your program. All the 7 ABA courses are offered online synchronously. So we join together on Zoom, just like we're doing here tonight. And that's where we do most of our coursework. That online coursework is very engaging. It's not just straight lecture for 3 hours staring at a computer screen. We do a lot of different group work. We take time to answer some questions and apply some of the skills that we're learning. For the master's program, those additional 5 special ed courses could be either asynchronous or synchronous. And that asynchronous is where you're sort of following along the course, following specific modules each week, and it's more independent, right? So you're not meeting with your professor one-on-one, through a class synchronously each week, but you are working through the content. You're engaged online through our Canvas learning management system. Again, the masters, they're offered in fall, spring, and summer. The courses are offered fall, spring, and summer, whereas the postmasters, there are no summer courses. Those are the ABA courses that are just fall and spring. So on this slide, we sort of go over our different learning objectives from the program. Obviously, our goal is for all of our BCBAs, all of our future BCBAs, all of our graduates to become board certified. And that is, you can see that's our last bullet point to successfully complete the Behavior Analyst Certification Board exam. But throughout the program, the learning objectives include being able to define, demonstrate, and apply those principles of behavior analysis, using research methods to evaluate and measure outcomes from those behavioral programming programs, design and implement, as well as evaluate instructional programs, practice within that ethics code, which is incredibly important, implement and manage practice apply behavior analysis in a variety of educational settings. So let's talk about practicum because I know that interests a lot of people. Again, our practicum courses enable our students to accrue those fieldwork hours that are required to become board certified. So oftentimes we will have people who are pursuing this graduate degree who are not currently working with BCBAs. Maybe they're working like in a public school setting and BCBAs are not part of their supervisory makeup. That's not who's supervising them within the school. So they would really need that support in getting a BCBA assigned to them, making sure they get all those fieldwork hours. Oftentimes, we have folks that work for ABA organizations or center-based programs where BCBAs and supervision from BCBAs is built into their employment. Those kind of folks probably would not pursue the practicum electives with us because they can accrue those fieldwork hours through their employment. So our practicum electives follow the concentrated experience fieldwork hours as outlined by the BACB. There are two types of fieldwork hours that you can accrue. We provide the opportunity to accrue the concentrated fieldwork hours, which is a total of 1,500 hours. Through our elective courses, we provide that supervision in the application of applied behavior analytics services across the 4 practicum electives. We have an ABA practicum coordinator who is a liaison between our students and their practicum sites and their BCBA supervisors. We provide all of our students with BCBA supervisors, so you don't have to find those supervisors. We vet all of them for you, make sure they are meeting the requirements as laid out by the BACB. As part of the course, you get a face-to-face seminar with an instructor who is, and this is where we get our group supervision. And then also you are assigned that BCBA supervisor with one-on-one meetings each week during practicum. So within each 15-week semester, our students can accrue 25 hours a week, 1.5 hours of individual supervision, and that 1 hour of group supervision. And all set together, that's 25 hours a week, 10% of your hours, which is above and beyond the BACB requirements, which I think is 7%. So all of our students are able to meet those BACB requirements. And if you're doing 25 hours a week in a 15-week semester, that's 375 hours a semester. Times 4 gets you to your 1,500 hours. Our students also typically can do their practicum placement in their place of employment as long as they are meeting those requirements outlined by the BACB for an appropriate practicum site. And for us, that's where our practicum coordinator comes in, makes sure that where you work enables you to be able to practice those strategies and to apply the science of applied behavior analysis. If it doesn't for any chance, then for any reason, then we will work with you to make sure that you have an appropriate site. One caveat, if you are doing the practicum electives, you must be local. That means you must be in the Maryland or DC area. We train all of our BCBAs that work and provide that supervision during the practicum electives. So we don't want to do remote supervision. We want all of our BCBA supervisors being able to travel out to our students, our practicum students' placements. So that's a really important piece. So if you are interested in doing the practicum electives, know that one of the requirements is to be local. Okay, next slide. Okay, so our next slide is our course sequence for the Masters in Special Ed. So you can see fall and spring each semester as well, the summer courses. So the first year you would take 2 courses in the summer. The second year you would only take 1 course in the summer. And there is an additional special ed course in the spring semester of year 2. You also see in blue the practicum courses. So how it falls out, if let's say you are taking the practicum courses, then it extends to that third year. If you are not taking the practicum courses, then you would finish in year two. But I actually want to go to the next screen, which is our postmaster certificate that really highlights, I really want to highlight the ABA courses. And so again, the master's students and the postmaster students are all taking their courses together at the same time. So, so each course is made up of, students from the master's degree and the postmaster certificate. So in the first year of the program, during the first semester, we're going to take two courses. One is Intro to Applied Behavior Analysis, and our second course is our Research Methods course. So we have to remember that students who are coming out of our program are being trained to become board certified behavior analysts and practitioners who work in educational settings. So when we think about research, people get really nervous about that research word, right? So this research is really everything that we do as practitioners is research, right? So we are evaluating our students' outcomes. We are measuring behaviors. We are making database decisions. So understanding the research that goes behind that is incredibly important and the methodology that goes behind it. So as I said before, ABA is a science. So as we're looking at our research methods, we're looking at the application of that science into applied settings. The intro course, I always say, is like moving to a new country and learning a new language. And that is what you're going to be doing during that course, understanding the principles and concepts and how they are applied within educational settings. During the spring semester of year one, we move into behavioral assessment and looking specifically at challenging behaviors, those behaviors that interfere with learning in different educational settings. And then the second semester will also focus on ethics. So what is our ethics code, how we apply that ethics code, and what is the set of professional skills that we need to have to be behavior analysts? And then the fall semester of the second year, we move into our second behavioral assessment course. This one is focused on instructional strategies. So whereas the previous semester, we're talking about how do we reduce interfering behaviors, and this course, we're talking about how do we improve behaviors we want to see. When we're talking about behavior, when I say the word behavior, that doesn't just mean challenging behaviors, that also means behaviors that we want to see every day, like reading and writing and being able to read signs and being able to go into the community. So these are all different, what we call skill acquisition programs. So in this course, you're going to be talking about how do we identify what skills our students need to learn, and then how do we teach them using applied behavior analysis. If students are doing the practicum electives, they're going to start during that second year fall semester. If they're not doing the field work hours with us and they're doing them outside of Hopkins on their own with maybe their employer, or they've hired somebody to do it for them, to supervise them, then you'd be taking our supervision and organizational behavior management course. So in this course, we're really talking about how do we supervise others, and that may be our direct reports, or it could also be people that we're consulting with. So how do we ensure that our ABA programs are implemented with fidelity? How do we make sure that data are collected? How do we support the staff or the adults who are part of that training process? And then the spring semester is our philosophical foundations in ABA. This is where we're integrating theory and practice within the field. This is one of the last classes that we take. If students are doing the practicum electives, then they'd be taking it that semester and take the philosophical foundations in the final semester. So if you look down to that next row, you see ABA Practicum 3 and that supervision course, and then ABA Practicum 4 and the philosophical foundations. So since we have 7 courses in the ABA program, during that second year, if you're doing the fieldwork hours, there's always just going to be one course. It will not divide equally, right? So you always have one semester with just one course, unless you're taking the electives. Okay, so that's our overview, and thinking about some additional information for this program, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Ellie. I'll have a few more slides to go through. Students who successfully complete the coursework in the program, either the master's or the postmaster's, will then graduate from Johns Hopkins with that degree. Upon successful completion of those fieldwork hours, obviously, either outside of the program or within the program, then you're ready to apply to the BACB for certification. It's really important to point out that graduates are responsible for applying and supplying all that documentation to the BACB. We don't apply for you or on your behalf. You need to be able to submit all of that documentation and do that application to the BACB to become board certified. It's also expected that any students that go through our program will seek out certification in behavior analysis. You can't go through this program and then say, well, I graduated from that Johns Hopkins program in ABA, so now I'm a board certified behavior analyst. That's not how it works. You actually do have to apply, become certified, as well as licensed. Some certain states do have licensure. Many states have licensure. So, for example, in Maryland, we do have licensure in behavior analysis. Again, Hopkins does not award that certification in applied behavior analysis. It is expected that all students will apply to the BACB. Some advantages. So my next few slides are questions that students always ask me or applicants always ask me. So I've decided to put in a few slides. But of course, your questions are always welcome. I'm not trying to head you off, but definitely it's a common question. So in my next few slides, I want to talk about some advantages of our program. One is that our focus is on ABA and education, right? So we're not like an ABA focused on autism type program. So we're focusing on all different disability categories within education. Our focus is on how do we use the science of ABA or apply the science of ABA within an educational setting. Students who go through our program do pass the exam. That's a huge benefit of our program. The exam is one measure, right? Those applied experiences are also incredibly important. And that's what we do through our practicum. So our practicum is definitely an advantage to get those field work hours, being able to provide BCBA supervisors that we train, the course that's associated with the practicum experience, with the fieldwork experience. So you really are following a curriculum throughout those practicum electives. It's also important to point part of the practicum that we're very proud of is that all of our students have different backgrounds and different experience levels. So we really want to try to meet through our practicum, we meet our students where their skill set is. So just like we do in our field of ABA, we collect assessment data on our current students. Where are they? What skills do they have? And then we make sure their fieldwork experiences meet them where they are. And then finally, all of our faculty who teach within our program are board certified at the doctoral level. So it's important that they all are board certified, but all of the folks are doctoral BCBAs. And they're all practicing ABA every single day. And then some milestones. Our program started in 2013. We actually started with our postmaster certificate in ABA in 2013. And in 2022, we added the master's degree in special ed with a focus on ABA. We've had 111 graduates since then, and they all represent a variety of professionals in education, from special educators, behavioral specialists, instructional specialists. We've had many school psychologists go through our program, few speech and language pathologists, many administrators, and instructional specialists. We've had 11 cohorts graduate. We are now working on 12, 13, and 14 across all graduates of the program. When we look at our data of pass rates, 88% passed the exam the first time, 95% pass rate overall. So if you look at the BACB, they do publish pass rates for universities each year. The 2025 pass rates have not come out yet. And when I calculate that 88% for all of our students, that's for all of our students across the entire program, not just each year, right? So overall, looking at all of our students, we have an 88% pass rate. For our students who maybe don't pass the first time, they do pass by the second time with our 95% overall pass rate. The majority of our students go on to become licensed behavior analysts in the state of Maryland or the state in which they are employed. So as I mentioned earlier, licensure across the states is very important. And if the state that you're living in has licensure in behavior analysis, once you graduate from this program, become board certified, you are encouraged to become a licensed behavior analyst so that you can practice in your state. Okay, next slide. Okay, and then I think This might be my last one, but who is the ideal candidate for the program? This is a question I do get a lot. And I typically will say a few things. One is that you have to have this desire to be in this field, right? You want to learn more about applied behavior analysis. You want to practice applied behavior analysis. You want to understand what the science is all about. Then this is definitely a program for you. If you are interested in just getting another certification, this may not be the right program. You have to be invested within the field. Understanding those requirements outlined by the BACB, as you guys have heard me say a few times throughout this presentation tonight, check out the BACB website. The BACB website has this listed. It's really important to understand those requirements. You don't have to have them memorized, but you have to understand what is required of you when you're going through a program. What does that program have to have? The 315 hours of instruction, the supervised fieldwork experiences, but also what do you need to do once you graduate from this program, once you are board certified, because you have continuing education credits. So if you're a lifelong learner, ABA is definitely the field for you because you're going to be continually learning even after you have your BCBA. Another characteristic is somebody who can commit 2 to 3 years of intensive graduate coursework. This is an intensive program. I don't want to scare anyone, but I also don't want to sugarcoat it. You're going to work really hard if you come to this program. There's a lot of writing for every single course, reading of lots of articles so that you can learn how to apply the research that you're reading. We do quizzes almost every night in this program, and that's so that you can practice for the BCBA exam. Many classes have finals, sometimes midterms, as well as papers that are due throughout the semester. So it is an intensive program, but if you're willing to work and study hard, that's my last line there, then this is definitely the program that's right for you. And then finally, the ideal candidate is somebody who can demonstrate meeting all of those admission requirements, which Eliel is going to talk to you about next. All right, so next steps is to make sure to review the BACB requirements, to make sure to get your application started, which Elia will talk about, and to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm very open to getting emails from potential applicants. I will respond to you. So please do make sure to reach out to me. You can see my email there. I'll also put it into the chat. But now I'll hand it over to you, Elia.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Martyr. So I'll go ahead and talk about the application requirements and the admissions process for both of these programs. So just to start off, minimum GPA for the qualifying degree, whether that's the undergrad or the graduate degree, is a 3.0. So just be aware of that. If you do have specific questions about your GPA, feel free to make an appointment with me at some point as you start your application, and we can have that discussion. There is an online application form that you will have to complete as well, and also just expect that $80 application fee. We do require all official transcripts for post-secondary institutions attended. So that means even if it was just one course, two courses, right, we will need those official transcripts. There is an essay / personal statement on the online application. I would encourage you all to take a look at that. Take a look at our website, our mission statement, revisit this recording as you prepare and write that personal statement. And then we will ask you to upload your resume or CV as part of the online application, and then 2 letters of recommendation. So those 2 letters of recommendation can either be academic or professional based. And just give some thought in terms of who you want to pick for those recommendations, right? These could be supervisors, colleagues. If you recently graduated from your undergrad or your master's program and you have a good relationship with a faculty member, right? Maybe having those early on conversations with those individuals can definitely help in preparing very strong recommendations. And then lastly, there could potentially be an interview, a phone interview from Dr. Martyr and other faculty, and there is no GRE required. So we do not take a GRE, so that should hopefully make the application process a little bit easier for both of these programs. Now, when it comes to internationally educated applicants, if you did take a course or maybe even completed an entire degree outside of the US or Canada, we do require a course by course evaluation of those academic credentials from a NASA's approved agency. For example, WES, ECE, SpanTran, and there's a few others, but visit the NASA's website and it'll give you a list of the approved credential evaluation agencies. The key thing is that it does need to be a course by course evaluation. Even if you think that course or even degree is insignificant, right? Or maybe it just has nothing to do with special education, we will still require that course by course eval. Um, this is a process, right, that you want to get started within a few months of the application deadline because depending on the volume of that agency, it can take sometimes between 2 months, and I've seen sometimes even 3 months for it to be completed. So plan ahead if that's the case. If you do have questions about this piece, again, feel free to make an appointment with me, send admissions an email, and more than happy to clarify any questions that you may have about the course by course eval. So moving forward from there, when it comes to tuition and fees for the 25 to 26 academic year, you will see for face-to-face master's and certificate programs, there is a cost per credit of $1,140, or total cost per course, if it's a 3 credit course, $3,420. Now, since both of these programs are online, you will want to go ahead and add an additional $20 per credit tech fee. So on that second line is going to be more representative for both the master's and postmaster's certificate program. Also, keep in mind that there is a $175 per semester registration fee. And then, as we kind of discussed prior, the application fee of $80. There are a few funding sources that you can take a look at when it comes to funding your degree, right? So federal aid, if you're eligible for, we would encourage you to complete the FAFSA, which could open opportunities to loans, work study, state and federal grants and scholarships. We do have scholarships within the School of Education. So we have what we call the SOE, or School of Education Endowed Scholarship Form, that you will want to complete by April 1st. You can find that on our website. I would also encourage you to have a discussion or look into your employer. Sometimes employers will offer employer tuition reimbursement or some form of benefit. And then lastly, right, there could potentially be private resources such as private loans or outside scholarships. We do have a financial aid team, which I can't recall if we have a slide on this, but I will say this now, right? There is a financial aid team that does meet with prospective students, regardless if you've applied or are in the review process or just inquiring about the program. Feel free to make an appointment with our financial aid team, and they can kind of walk with you in terms of what the total cost would be, but definitely what type of funding sources may be eligible for you. So I talked about the endowed scholarships, right? Those are limited number partial need-based scholarships for the fall and spring academic semesters. We would encourage you to look at our external scholarship resources. So scholarship.com and teacher.org are two good resources to start scouring and seeing which ones you may be eligible to apply for. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you want to complete the FAFSA as well. The next slide is actually our financial aid team. So this is Nettie Matz, Director of Financial Aid, and Jennifer Fordham, Financial Aid Specialist. So if you were to scan those QR codes, you will find their appointment calendars. I do know that Jenny or Jennifer Fordham is typically more available on Mondays and Fridays, and Nettie is kind of scattered throughout the month. So go ahead and start making an appointment with them, just in questions about how to maximize your financial aid, understanding your loan options, right? Budgeting and planning. or even navigating the FAFSA. So I, understand that for some individuals, it might be several years since the last time you completed the FAFSA. So again, they're there to kind of help and guide and support you in understanding this process of the enrollment piece. So that is financial aid. Lastly, when it comes to the application, our online application, our deadline for both of these programs, the master's and postmaster certificate, is July 15th of 2026 for the fall of 2026. We only do fall starts for both programs. I would encourage you, if you are interested in applying, to apply as early as possible. Um, if you have questions about your application process, please feel free to send me an email or make an appointment. If you send me an email, and I'll try to do my best here after we're done with the webinar to send everyone a follow-up email with my individual calendar appointment. I do appointments Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If by any chance, because I do know for special education programs, a lot of you are either educators or working full-time, please don't hesitate to reach out if none of the times make sense for you. I'm more than happy to accommodate my schedule and meet, after work, work hours of 9 to 5. So with that being said, we will go ahead and transition to the Q&A. Okay, so we do have a few questions coming in. I'll go ahead and start the first one here. So this is from Anya Randall. I'm curious to know on how ABA can be applied outside of an educational setting.
It's an excellent question, Anya. Thank you for asking it. We actually see the signs of ABA in lots of different specialty areas. Um, a big one that we see increasing is behavioral gerontology is definitely an area where we see ABA apply to helping individuals. We also see it in public health. We see it in organizational behavior management. That's when BCBAs might go into a big organization and help them with their staff development, staff safety. We also see it in health and fitness to help people who are dealing with substance use disorders. So we do see ABA applied in lots of different settings outside of education. But in order to be in those settings, obviously you need that specific training and supervision. For example, I am a BCBA, but I cannot work with individuals with substance use disorders because it's not my area of expertise. So we definitely see a lot of specialties. Again, I'll tell you, as I've said it again many times tonight, check out the BACB website. They do a really nice video explaining about where the science of ABA can be seen across different disciplines. Great question. Thanks for asking that one.
Great, thank you, Dr. Martyr. So I'll handle the next one, but feel free to add any information that I may be missing. So one of the questions is, can you describe the demographic breakdown of the students currently in the program? So I will say, for the most part, this program does see most of its current students from the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. And the majority of current students, I would also say, are working professionals, hence why this program is offered online, synchronous and asynchronous, depending on the master's or postmaster's certificate program. Dr. Marta, I don't know if you want to add anything on your end, but that's typically what I see from the admissions side.
I
Oh,
would agree with most of that, LAL. Yep, absolutely.
great. So the next one is, what are the most common challenges students face in this program?
That is a great question
Yeah.
too. I think if a student if a student hasn't been in graduate school so students who are going for the postmaster certificate, but maybe it's been a few years since they've been back in graduate school, there's definitely a transition back into graduate school. For folks who are coming from undergrad, going to graduate school, again, it's sort of managing that transition from, an undergraduate experience to a graduate experience. And then I think I think the other thing is just learning how to balance everything because working full time and taking classes, even though there's only two classes a semester, it could be a challenge, especially if you have other, personal responsibilities. So it's doable. We've had students who have lots of responsibilities, like family responsibilities, other students who do not have those types of responsibilities. Everybody's quite successful within the program. But being able to sort of manage all of those aspects, and I will say that our faculty are here to support you along all of those different transitions.
Thanks, Dr. Martyr. So we have a student who's currently enrolled in a master's program for special education at Bowie State with an expected graduation date of May 2027. When is a good time to begin the application process for the graduate certificate or the postmaster certificate program? So, in this case, since you are completing your master's 2027 of May, I would say that you want to be starting the postmaster certificate program for the fall of 2027, which would be around mid to late August is when we start the fall semester. So, when you would be applying to this program would be typically starting the application will go live this coming August, with the deadline being July of 2027. So hopefully that makes sense. Don't apply right now with the application being live. Wait until the next cycle opens up here in the summer. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so what is the total cost of the postgraduate certificate program, including the practicum course? So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the cost per credit for you so you can kind of see the online course. So just as a reminder, it's 1,140 plus $20 since it's an online course program. Total credits for the postmasters is it 21, Dr. Martyr? I'm blanking
It's
here.
21, and I think this individual is asking about with the practicum, so it's 21 plus 12 credits for the practicum.
Yeah, yeah. So you would just want to take into account those total credits and multiply that by 1,160, and it'll give you a sense of what the tuition costs would be. Do you know if AACPS offers reimbursement for this program? I'm not quite sure what
I can
AAC.
answer
Okay,
that. I
you
can
probably
answer
do,
that.
Dr.
So that's
Martin.
Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So we've been in contact with Anne Arundel as well as many other public schools within Maryland. I know that AACPS does have tuition reimbursement for employees. So I would definitely check with your HR department about, how that works. We also will at times have grants through the State Department of Maryland, the Maryland State Department of Education, where they do have supported us over the last, oh gosh, 12 years now, I think it is, with some funding for tuition. It really depends on what discretionary funds the federal government sends to the state, and what opportunities they have available. So grants have not yet opened for from MSDE for fall 2026. But definitely keep checking back about that.
And how frequently would you say students are able to connect with faculty and
So
staff?
yeah, great question. I would assume that Autumn, that you are asking about outside of class once a week, right? So each class is offered once a week, where you have that one-on-one with your faculty. But the other answer I would give, so outside of class would be as often as you like. So I have met with students once a week if they wanted to. I have some students where I just meet with them at the end of the semester. There's always opportunities to connect with faculty. And I invite it all the time. So I would rather be meeting with my students than doing mostly anything else. So there's lots of opportunities to be meeting with the faculty.
And are practical opportunities paid work placements? And would you recommend against only having one supervisor?
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's two questions there. Are practicum opportunities paid work? So if you need a placement, we do not guarantee a paid placement. So if we're working with you to get a placement, That has never actually happened because most students will, if their current place of employment does not meet the BACB requirements for practicum, they will apply for other jobs. So the goal is for you to be at a placement where you're actually getting paid and getting that supervision. But we don't coordinate paid work placements. Um, would you recommend against only having one supervisor? No, I wouldn't. And actually, we don't. So within our program with the practicum electives, you do have your group supervisor through the practicum course, and that's a BCBA who's considered your group supervisor, and then you have your individual supervisor. Oftentimes, we also change our supervisors across the practicum courses, across the semesters. I think it's really important to have more than one supervisor because that's what gives you opens you up to different perspectives with regards to practice. So I think it's really important to have more than one.
So the next question is, if you have some personal matters and you have to pause learning for several months, can we extend our learning time frame or rejoin the program for the next semester?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that our program, I think you have 5 years to complete the program. So if you need to extend the program in any way, that is a possibility. Personal issues always come up. We are in the real world, right? So personal issues can come up, and I would always encourage any students that are dealing with that. We've got lots of supports here at the School of Education. It's really kind of cool. We have this wonderful student affairs office that supports our students with personal issues as they come up, with medical issues. We have free counseling. So we have lots of opportunities to support our students if those personal issues come up.
So, and Tammy, I don't know if you're going to know this one, but do you know of any programs are available through employers for assistance or reimbursement for this program? I know for like mild to moderate disabilities, we have a partnership with Montgomery County.
Yeah, yeah. So we have, I mentioned the MSDE grants if those are available. You would have to talk to your individual employer if they provide any reimbursement. I know I mentioned with individuals asking about Anne Arundel County Public Schools. If you're in a public school system, they often will provide tuition reimbursement for coursework. It really just depends. I think it's usually a dollar amount as opposed to credits. Um, but that really can change based on the public school that you work within. So, for the person that asked that question, I would highly recommend that you talk to your employer. If you are interested in looking at employers that do provide tuition support and reimbursement, then definitely email me, and I can give you some employers that I know of that do have that opportunity.
And then when completing the practicum with BCBAs, are we able to work with in a specialized area such as substance abuse or corporate settings?
Yeah, another great question. And the quick answer is no. So because our ABA program here at Johns Hopkins is really focused on educational settings, those are the settings that we are placing folks in or we're working within. And those are the settings that we have the expertise to provide that supervision. If you are interested in working in substance abuse areas or, organizational behavior management, then let's definitely talk. Let's think about, I can talk with you to think about what type of programs you should be applying to, and what opportunities there are out there to get that supervision.
And then, do we offer any in-person course options for the postmaster certificate if we don't want to attend online? So I think the answer is no for that, but Tammy,
Yeah, yeah, we're fully online synchronous. And so, I would say I understand the aspect of being online versus in person. I personally would love to be in person as well. We do have opportunities to meet up in person. And we actually just had an event a few weeks ago with the whole ABA program where we brought everybody together in Baltimore, had a nice brunch on a Sunday morning and talked ABA. But for folks who are concerned about that online aspect, I would say the way that we teach our classes is like being in person, because you are actively engaged in the class throughout. Even though it's online, it is synchronous, so it's ongoing in the moment.
sorry. So this person's a general education classroom teacher. How would they incorporate practicum into their daily work if they do not have a group of kids with autism?
Okay, well, I would say you definitely don't need to have students with autism in order to practice ABA, because we are looking at ABA in education. So, there are plenty of opportunities. That's where a practicum coordinator comes in to work with you to make sure, can we ensure that you are having those opportunities to practice?
And then are there opportunities for students to become grad assistants or TAs?
So we do have grad assistants or TAs throughout the School of Education. We have not yet had anybody from the ABA program do that. Um, typically we have our doctoral students who are TAs, or grad assistants. Well, let's say TAs first. If you're interested in a grad assistantship, there are opportunities to do that. If it's specific to ABA, that might be a little bit more of a challenge when it comes to within the School of Ed, but we do have opportunities within Johns Hopkins outside of the School of Ed. So we've got many connections for sure to hook everybody up with those kind of experiences.
So in regards to in-person events, that is in terms of just student experiences, I will say it's on that falls into the Office of Student Affairs, and I will say that weekly they do have engagements for students to participate across all programs. So if you are in the area, near Baltimore, you're more than welcome to attend those in-person events. But they also host weekly events for students who are virtual.
Also, I'm gonna also add to that with if anybody has sort of been following along with Johns Hopkins School of Education, we do have this wonderful renovated building with lots of student space. So when we just had our specific ABA events 2 weeks ago, a few students asked like, "Hey, can we just come into this building?" Absolutely. So even if you're an online student, the building is open to all of our students, regardless of how you attend classes. So there's lots of study rooms. There's lots of opportunities for engagement. Every time I've been at the new building, I see lots of students walking around. So there's definitely lots of opportunities for getting that in-person feel outside of class. I see the next question about elaborating on Hopkins opportunities for grad students. So I'll give you a really good example. I had a student who was very much so interested in getting involved in a research project, and I didn't have any current research projects. So I reached out to colleagues at the School of Public Health, and there was a research project that was ongoing that they needed some graduate student support on, and so she was able to do that work over the summer. So that would be one example.
And then about resources compared to in-person programs, yeah, I mean, you will have
Absolutely.
access to all those resources, and not just within the School of Ed, but also from Hopkins as a whole. So I would always encourage students, when you're coming into Hopkins within the School of Ed, don't just limit yourself to the School of Education. Feel free to venture out to some of the other units and departments at the university. So yeah, in terms of those resources, you are going to have the same ones as in-person students. So does the cost breakdown include the cost for books? So it doesn't. So the screen that I had earlier is specifically just for tuition and fees. So we will ask, right, that you kind of budget also for indirect costs, such as books or other materials that you may need for courses. If you go onto our website, and I'll try to add here in the chat box, we have a guide on what you should expect typically for a master's or a postmaster certificate program. I'm a behavioral specialist, not certified. I work in childcare program in PG and AA County. My specialized area is special education. When completing the practicum with BCBAs, is there placement within early childhood education?
Yeah, we do provide fieldwork experience. We have supervisors that can provide that fieldwork experience within early education for sure, early childhood.
Great. So, folks, we are gonna go ahead and wrap up here. Thanks again for attending this session this evening. Again, if you're interested in the program, feel free to reach out to myself or to Dr. Martyr. I did go ahead and put my appointment calendar on the chat box. So if you wanted to have a one-on-one with me about the admissions process, the application process, feel free to do so. If you had specific program-based questions that I may not be able to answer, feel free to reach out to Dr. Martyr. And then just as a reminder, the application deadline is July 15th. But again, if you're interested in the program, apply as soon as possible. We'll have more webinars as we kind of go through here through the spring semester. So feel free to reach out or attend another of those. But other than that, enjoy your evening and thank you.